Talk Ava. Learn English with confidence.
I had a slightly embarrassing moment yesterday, and I did not realize it sounded strange until later.
That usually means the sentence sounded natural in your head, but completely different socially.
That is painfully accurate. I was carrying grocery bags into my apartment building, and one of my neighbors held the door open for me. I smiled and said, "Thank you for supporting me with my bags."
That sentence is technically understandable, but it sounds emotionally much bigger than the situation itself.
See, that confused me because help and support feel very similar in my brain.
They are similar logically, but native speakers usually feel a difference emotionally. And before we continue, if you enjoy these kinds of real English conversations, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
The strange part is that my neighbor looked slightly confused for half a second, not offended, just surprised.
Because support often sounds deeper and more emotional than help. Holding a door is small and immediate. Support usually feels longer and more personal.
So, thank you for helping me with my bags sounds natural because the action is temporary.
Exactly. Somebody helps you for a moment. Support usually feels more ongoing emotionally.
That honestly explains something I noticed years ago. When people talk about emotional situations, they often use support instead of help.
Yes, especially during difficult periods in life. People say things like, "My family supported me during college," or "My friends supported me after the breakup."
And those situations feel emotionally heavier than carrying grocery bags.
That's the hidden difference learners often miss. The meaning sounds similar, but the feeling changes.
I think learners focus so much on dictionary meanings that we forget native speakers also hear emotional weight inside vocabulary.
That happens constantly. English is full of words that technically overlap but create very different emotional atmospheres.
I think support also sounds calmer somehow. Help feels faster.
That is actually a very good observation. Help often feels immediate. Somebody helps you solve a problem quickly. Support usually feels steady and continuous.
Now I'm thinking about school. Teachers helped me with homework sometimes, but my parents supported my education for years.
That sounds very natural emotionally, because support there feels long-term.
I think this is why learners sometimes sound slightly strange even when the grammar is correct. The emotional size of the word does not match the situation.
Exactly. Imagine somebody hands you a pen and you say, "Thank you for supporting me." That suddenly sounds dramatically emotional for no reason.
That honestly sounds like I survived a major life crisis involving office supplies.
And that emotional mismatch is what native speakers notice immediately.
I think learners secretly believe using bigger words makes English sound more advanced.
Meanwhile, native speakers often choose smaller words because they match the emotional size of the situation better.
That idea of emotional size is really interesting, actually.
Because natural English is often emotional before it is logical, native speakers hear feeling and tone automatically.
I think another reason this confused me is that in many languages, words like help and support overlap much more naturally.
That's very true, but in English, support often carries emotional presence with it. It sounds like somebody stayed beside you during something difficult or important.
So if I say, "My friend supported me when I lost my job," that feels natural because the situation is emotional and long-term.
Yes, because support there feels human and personal instead of quick and practical.
Meanwhile, if I say, "My friend supported me opening a jar," people will probably look at me strangely.
Because now the emotional weight feels completely wrong for the situation.
This honestly feels less like vocabulary and more like psychology. That is true for a lot of natural English, actually.
I also noticed something else. Help can sometimes sound physical or practical. Support sounds more emotional or motivational.
Very often, yes. Somebody helps you carry furniture. Somebody supports your dreams.
That difference suddenly feels very obvious now.
Because the situations create different emotional energy automatically.
I think this is one of those topics learners understand logically after 5 minutes, but emotionally after years.
That might be one of the most accurate things you've said in this podcast. Okay, now I'm curious about something. Can both words work in some situations naturally?
Yes, definitely, but the feeling usually changes slightly.
That's where English becomes dangerous.
Dangerous, but interesting.
All right, give me an example.
Imagine somebody says, "Thank you for helping me through that difficult time." That sounds natural because the person gave practical and emotional help during a hard period.
And if I say, "Thank you for supporting me through that difficult time," it sounds deeper emotionally.
Yes, support there feels steadier and more emotionally present.
I think support almost sounds quieter and stronger emotionally.
That's actually a really beautiful description of it.
Meanwhile, help feels quicker and more active somehow.
Exactly. Help often feels like solving a problem directly. Support feels like staying beside somebody while they go through something.
That difference suddenly feels huge emotionally, even though the words looked almost identical before.
Because native speakers do not only hear definitions, they hear emotional atmosphere too.
I think learners are trained to hear words mathematically. Native speakers hear them socially.
That is honestly one of the deepest differences between studying English and living inside English conversations.
I also noticed people use support a lot online now. Somebody posts about stress or failure, and comments say things like, "We support you," or "I'm here to support you."
Because support often implies emotional presence, loyalty, or long-term involvement, the sentence immediately sounds more personal.
So even without extra details, support already sounds emotionally serious.
Very often, yes. Imagine somebody saying, "I need your support right now." Most people immediately expect an emotional or difficult situation.
Meanwhile, "I need your help right now" could simply mean opening a box or fixing a computer problem.
Exactly. Help usually feels practical and immediate. Support feels emotional and continuous.
I think native speakers feel that emotional difference automatically without consciously thinking about it.
They usually do, because emotional tone becomes part of vocabulary naturally over time.
This explains something from work, actually. A coworker once told me, "Thank you for supporting the team this month." That sounded emotionally bigger than helping the team.
Because support there suggests steady contribution and emotional reliability over time, not just one action.
So support almost feels connected to commitment sometimes.
That's a very strong observation.
I also noticed companies use support constantly. Customer support, technical support, support team.
That's interesting because even there, support suggests ongoing assistance instead of one quick action.
Meanwhile, nobody says customer help department.
Exactly, because support sounds more stable and dependable professionally.
I think learners underestimate how emotional word choice really is in English.
Definitely. Native speakers often choose vocabulary based on emotional feeling more than strict dictionary logic.
I'm starting to hear that everywhere now. Help sounds active and immediate. Support sounds steadier and emotionally present.
That's why support appears so often during stressful life situations. Mental health, relationships, family pressure, difficult goals. Those situations usually require emotional presence over time.
Now I'm remembering something from university. One friend used to say, "Thank you for supporting me through exams." Nobody would say, "Thank you for helping me through exams" with the exact same emotional feeling.
Both can work, but support sounds emotionally warmer there because the stress lasted longer.
That emotional warmth is the part learners miss sometimes.
Because learners often study meaning first and emotional atmosphere much later.
I honestly think this is why native speakers sometimes sound more emotionally precise, even with simple vocabulary.
That's true, because emotional precision matters more socially than advanced wording most of the time.
Okay, now I want to test something dangerous.
That sentence usually leads to chaos.
Imagine somebody says, "Can you support me moving my couch tomorrow?"
That sounds emotionally too dramatic for furniture.
See, that's the feeling I'm finally noticing now. The sentence sounds heavier than the actual situation.
Exactly. Help me move my couch sounds natural because it's a practical action.
Meanwhile, support sounds like we're emotionally surviving the couch together.
That might honestly be true depending on the couch.
Fair point, actually.
But this is why emotional vocabulary awareness matters so much in natural English. Two sentences can be grammatically fine while creating completely different emotional feelings.
And learners usually focus so heavily on correctness that they miss the emotional atmosphere completely.
That happens constantly.
I think another interesting thing is that support sounds emotionally calmer somehow.
What do you mean?
Help feels active and immediate. Support feels quieter and steadier emotionally.
That's actually a really beautiful description. Somebody helps during moments, somebody supports through periods of time.
That difference suddenly feels huge emotionally.
Because support often implies emotional consistency, not only action.
Okay, now I'm noticing something else. Support sounds warmer in relationships too.
Definitely.
People say things like, "My partner supports my goals," or "My family supports my decisions."
Because support there means emotional encouragement, belief, patience, and presence over time.
Meanwhile, help feels smaller in those situations emotionally.
Usually, yes. Help often solves immediate problems. Support often strengthens people emotionally while they continue struggling or growing.
That honestly makes support sound much deeper than I realized originally.
Because emotionally, it often is deeper.
I think this is where learners usually get confused, though. Sometimes both words technically work.
Yes, and that's what makes English emotionally difficult sometimes.
Because grammar alone cannot explain the feeling difference completely.
Exactly. Native speakers often choose words emotionally, not only logically.
That line honestly explains natural English better than most textbooks.
Because textbooks usually teach definitions, real conversations teach emotional atmosphere.
Okay, let's test real situations because I think that's where the difference becomes obvious naturally.
Good idea.
Imagine your friend failed an important exam and feels terrible emotionally.
In that situation, "I'm here to support you" sounds much warmer and more emotionally present.
Meanwhile, "I'm here to help you" sounds more practical somehow.
Exactly. Help sounds like solving a problem directly. Support sounds like emotional presence during a difficult time.
Now imagine somebody drops books everywhere in a hallway.
Then help sounds natural immediately because the action is quick and practical.
Nobody would dramatically kneel beside the books and whisper, "I'm here to support you."
That sounds emotionally life-changing for absolutely no reason.
This topic is becoming unintentionally funny because emotional weight changes everything.
That's actually why native speakers notice vocabulary choices so quickly socially. Words quietly change emotional atmosphere constantly.
I honestly think learners hear vocabulary like machines sometimes. We focus too much on technical meaning.
Meanwhile, native speakers hear relationship feeling, seriousness, emotional closeness, and tone automatically.
I think I finally understand something important now. Fluent English is emotional accuracy, not only grammar accuracy.
That sentence explains this entire topic beautifully.
And honestly, once you notice emotional weight inside words, English conversations suddenly sound much more alive.
Because now you're hearing conversations socially instead of mathematically.
I had another strange moment today that made me think about this topic again.
What happened this time?
I was trying to open a jar in the kitchen, and I jokingly said to my roommate, "Can you support me opening this?"
That sounds emotionally dramatic for a jar.
That's the thing. The moment I said it out loud, I heard the problem immediately.
Because support suddenly made the situation sound emotionally serious instead of practical.
It sounded like the jar represented my entire emotional struggle in life.
And your roommate was about to guide you spiritually through the experience.
Honestly, the kitchen became emotionally intense for no reason.
This is actually one of the funniest parts of natural English. Some words carry more emotional weight than the situation needs.
And support definitely felt too emotionally heavy there.
Because opening a jar is small, immediate, and practical. Help matches the emotional size of the action naturally.
Meanwhile, support sounds like emotional presence during something meaningful or difficult.
Exactly. Can you help me open this jar? Sounds normal because the action lasts 5 seconds and then disappears.
I think that's the hidden pattern I'm finally hearing now. Help usually feels temporary, support feels emotionally ongoing.
That's a huge part of the difference.
I also noticed support often sounds calmer emotionally.
What do you mean by calmer?
Help feels active and immediate. Support feels quieter, steadier, and emotionally present over time.
That's actually a really natural way to describe it. Now I'm thinking about difficult life situations again. People support friends through depression, stress, career problems, or emotional pressure.
Because those situations require emotional presence, not only quick practical action.
Meanwhile, help sounds more practical. Helping someone carry boxes, helping somebody fix a laptop, helping someone with homework.
Exactly. Help often sounds connected to solving immediate problems directly.
I think learners struggle because both words can appear in similar situations sometimes.
That's true, but the emotional atmosphere changes depending on the word choice.
For example, my parents helped me through college sounds natural.
Yes, because maybe they helped financially or practically.
But my parents supported me through college sounds emotionally deeper somehow.
Because now it sounds like emotional encouragement, belief, patience, and long-term presence too.
That emotional difference is surprisingly powerful, honestly.
Because native speakers hear relationships inside vocabulary automatically.
I think learners often hear only actions.
Exactly. Native speakers hear emotional tone, closeness, seriousness, and social feeling too.
This honestly feels more like psychology than vocabulary learning sometimes.
That's because natural language is deeply emotional.
I also realized something interesting recently. People often use support online emotionally. Somebody posts about stress and comments say things like, "We support you," or "sending support."
Because support sounds emotionally warm and continuous there.
Nobody comments, "I am helping your emotions from afar."
That sounds deeply uncomfortable.
This topic is making me laugh because emotionally strange English becomes obvious once you notice it.
And once learners start hearing emotional weight, they usually cannot ignore it afterward.
I think that's happening to me already.
Good. That means you're starting to hear English socially instead of only logically.
Okay, now I want more real-life situations because I think that's where this difference becomes natural emotionally.
Perfect. Let's imagine your friend is moving apartments this weekend.
Then I'd naturally say, "I'll help you move."
Exactly, because carrying furniture is practical and immediate.
But if my friend feels emotionally overwhelmed during the move, then I might say, "I'm here to support you."
Yes, because now the focus becomes emotional presence during stress.
Interesting. So sometimes both words can exist around the same situation, but they focus on different emotional layers.
That's a really important realization, actually.
Okay, another situation. Imagine somebody is training for something difficult, like a marathon.
Then support sounds very natural emotionally. I support your goal, or I'll support you through the process.
Because the situation lasts longer emotionally.
Exactly. Long-term goals often create emotional pressure, and support sounds emotionally steady there.
Meanwhile, help sounds smaller and more practical again.
Yes, you might help someone one day during training, but support sounds bigger than one moment.
I honestly think learners miss how much duration affects emotional vocabulary.
That's very true. Support often stretches emotionally across time. Help often stays connected to a moment or action.
Okay, now I'm imagining workplace situations.
That's actually interesting because offices use both constantly.
A coworker might help me finish a presentation tonight.
But a manager might support your career growth for years.
That difference suddenly feels very obvious emotionally.
Because help solves tasks, support strengthens people.
That sentence sounds incredibly important, actually.
And honestly, native speakers feel those emotional differences even when they never consciously study them.
I think learners sometimes assume fluency means memorizing vocabulary definitions, but emotional understanding seems much more important socially.
Definitely. Emotional accuracy makes conversations sound natural.
I also notice support sounds emotionally warmer in relationships.
Very often, people say things like, "My partner supports me," and it sounds emotionally meaningful immediately.
Because support there includes encouragement, patience, understanding, emotional safety, and long-term presence together.
Meanwhile, "My partner helps me" sounds smaller emotionally.
Usually more practical, yes.
I think I'm finally understanding why some English conversations feel emotionally strange, even when grammar is perfect.
Because vocabulary carries emotional atmosphere quietly underneath the meaning.
And native speakers notice those emotional layers automatically.
Exactly. That's why natural English feels human instead of mechanical. People are constantly choosing emotional tone, not only vocabulary definitions.
I honestly think this topic changed how I hear simple words completely.
Because now you're hearing relationships and emotional presence inside language, too.
I think the biggest realization from this conversation is that native speakers hear emotion inside vocabulary much more than learners expect.
That's true, because fluent English is not only about meaning, it's also about emotional tone, relationship feeling, seriousness, warmth, and duration.
I honestly never thought about vocabulary emotionally before. I mostly treated words like logical replacements for each other.
That's how many learners study at first. Words become definitions instead of emotional experiences.
Meanwhile, native speakers seem to feel words automatically.
Because they connect vocabulary to real-life situations, relationships, stress, comfort, humor, and emotional memory over time.
I think that's why support suddenly feels so different to me now. Earlier, it was just another version of help. Now it sounds emotionally bigger.
Because now you're hearing emotional atmosphere inside the word instead of only dictionary meaning.
I honestly think this changes how people sound socially. Two learners can know the same vocabulary, but one sounds much more natural emotionally.
Definitely. Emotional accuracy makes English sound human.
That phrase really stayed in my head after earlier. Help solves moments, support stays longer. That honestly explains the feeling difference perfectly.
Because support usually carries emotional presence with it. Somebody stays beside you emotionally through something difficult or important.
Meanwhile, help feels quicker and more practical.
Usually, yes.
I also noticed something else now. Native speakers choose words based on emotional size.
That's a very important observation.
Like, opening a jar is tiny emotionally, so help sounds natural, but support sounds emotionally too large for the situation. Exactly. The emotional weight no longer matches the action.
I think learners sometimes accidentally sound strange because the emotional size of the vocabulary becomes too big or too small.
That happens constantly in natural English conversations.
Honestly, this topic makes English feel much more alive than before.
Because real conversations are emotional systems, not only grammar systems.
I wish more English lessons explained things this way. Most learners spend years memorizing definitions without hearing emotional feeling.
That's because emotional fluency is much harder to teach through simple rules.
But it feels much more important socially.
It really is. Fluent English is emotional accuracy, not only grammar accuracy.
That line honestly changed the way I think about fluency completely.
Because once learners understand emotional tone, conversations usually start sounding much more natural automatically.
I think I'm noticing emotional tone everywhere now. Somebody says, "I support you," and suddenly the sentence feels warm, steady, and personal emotionally.
Because support often carries emotional loyalty and presence inside it naturally.
Meanwhile, "I'll help you" sounds kind but more practical and immediate.
Exactly. Both are positive, but the emotional feeling changes.
I honestly think native speakers feel those emotional differences instantly without consciously realizing it.
Most of the time they do. Emotional tone becomes automatic after years of hearing language socially.
This whole conversation also explains why some learners sound technically fluent but emotionally unusual sometimes.
Because grammar can be correct while emotional vocabulary choice still feels slightly unnatural.
I think earlier I focused too much on replacing words with stronger vocabulary.
That's very common. Learners often think bigger vocabulary automatically sounds more advanced.
Meanwhile, native speakers usually choose vocabulary that matches the emotional atmosphere naturally.
Exactly. Natural English often sounds emotionally balanced instead of intellectually impressive.
That sentence feels really important, honestly.
Because real conversations are about comfort and connection, much more than performance.
I think this topic also made me less afraid of using simpler English.
That's actually a huge improvement for learners.
Earlier, I thought simple vocabulary sounded weak. Now I think emotionally correct vocabulary sounds fluent.
That's a much more natural understanding of spoken English. Okay, let me test myself one last time because I genuinely think my brain hears these words differently now.
Go for it.
If my friend is carrying heavy boxes, I say, "I'll help you."
That sounds natural.
If my friend is struggling emotionally during a difficult year, I say, "I'm here to support you."
That version sounds much more natural there.
I can finally feel the emotional difference instead of only understanding it logically.
And once you feel vocabulary emotionally, conversations usually become much easier socially.
I think that's the biggest change happening for me now. Earlier, English felt like solving language puzzles. Now, it feels more connected to people.
Because natural conversation is deeply connected to human emotion and social feeling.
And honestly, that makes English much more interesting.
It also makes conversations feel more real and much less robotic.
I still think I'll hesitate sometimes, though. Some situations probably still confuse me emotionally.
That's completely normal. Emotional fluency develops slowly through real conversations and repeated exposure.
But now, at least I noticed the difference. Earlier, help and support looked almost identical to me. Now they feel emotionally different immediately.
That awareness changes everything because now your brain is listening socially, not only grammatically.
I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest hidden differences between advanced learners and natural speakers.
Very often it is. Native speakers usually choose vocabulary based on emotional feeling automatically.
And the strange thing is that these emotional differences are usually invisible in textbooks.
Because books can explain definitions, but real conversations teach emotional atmosphere.
That sentence honestly feels like the theme of this entire podcast now.
Probably because it's true for so much everyday English. And if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because sometimes the biggest English differences are not grammar differences, they're emotional differences.
That honestly describes a huge number of learners, because most people study grammar, vocabulary, and structure for years before they spend enough time around real, casual conversations.
And now I'm realizing those are almost two different experiences completely.
They really are. Academic English teaches you how to build correct sentences. Everyday talk teaches you how to make interactions feel comfortable and alive.
I think that's why some people sound fluent immediately, even with simple vocabulary. They understand conversational rhythm naturally.
Exactly. Relaxed reactions, emotional timing, curiosity, openness, and warmth matter much more than learners expect.
Earlier, I thought fluency meant sounding advanced. Now I think fluency might actually mean sounding comfortable.
That's a much more realistic understanding of natural English, honestly.
And weirdly, the more natural English becomes, the less perfect it sounds sometimes.
Because people are not reading from scripts during real conversations. They're reacting emotionally in real time.
I think learners secretly imagine native speakers constantly speaking in complete, polished sentences.
Meanwhile, native speakers interrupt themselves, exaggerate, complain dramatically, forget words, change direction mid-sentence, and react emotionally all the time.
And somehow that messy style sounds more human.
Because human conversations are emotional before they're technical.
That line explains so much, honestly.
Think about the conversations people actually remember. Nobody says, wow, that person used excellent grammar structures today. People remember energy instead.
That's true. We remember funny people, warm people, relaxed people, expressive people.
Exactly. People remember conversations that feel easy.
I think I finally understand why my English sometimes sounded distant without me realizing it. I was too focused on avoiding mistakes.
And fear usually creates controlled language.
Meanwhile, natural conversations seem much more emotionally open.
Because fluent speakers are not trying to sound perfect constantly. They're focused on connection, reaction, and flow instead.
Honestly, this conversation removed pressure from my brain a little. For years, I felt like every sentence needed to sound impressive.
That pressure makes conversations exhausting for learners because your brain never relaxes fully.
Exactly. Even during simple, small talk, my brain was secretly working like a translator and grammar checker at the same time.
While native speakers are usually just reacting naturally without overthinking every word.
I think that's why everyday conversations feel fast sometimes. Native speakers respond emotionally immediately instead of constructing perfect answers slowly.
Yes, and emotional reactions keep conversational energy moving naturally.
I also noticed something interesting today. The simpler the sentence becomes emotionally, the more natural it often sounds socially.
That's very true. Casual English usually depends more on rhythm and feeling than complicated wording.
So fluency is not only knowing English, it's feeling relaxed while using it around people.
Exactly. Fluency is feeling comfortable around people, not around grammar.
That line honestly changed how I think about speaking English completely.
Because once learners stop chasing perfect English, conversations often become much easier and much more enjoyable.